my knowledge about Bethlehem was from the Bible. And my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was born here. And of course, a lot of people, they want to come here to visit and see places. But for me, it was a surprise and shock to see how hard and how difficult is the situation.
I remember being on the bus and hearing the guy kept talking about the wall. What wall is he talking about? So like I came into this situation having absolutely no idea that there was any sort of conflict or that Palestine even existed.
I was actually born in the States. My father's Palestinian and my mother's American, but I was raised here in Bethlehem. I had quite a few bad experiences talking with Christians in the US. I was kicked out of 2 churches, technically asked to leave another 2, accused of being a Muslim spy, accused of being a terrorist, that we're all Muslim, that we all condone violence, that we hate the West and the US. So those are some of the greatest misconceptions, I would say.
These are some of the items that we found in the street that the soldiers from the tower throw at us. You can see the gas canisters, the rubber-coated bullets, hand-stunned grenades, live ammunition.
I can remember very clearly standing in the Garden of Gethsemane and just crying. How can this be the Holy Land? How can this be the place of peace? Because that's not what I realize the people who are living here are experiencing. It's sad. There are these great big red signs. They always put them on both sides of the road. They're in Hebrew, Arabic, and English, and it says, danger. Entry. You are entering into Area A. Strictly forbidden for Israeli citizens to enter Area A. It could be dangerous and you may even die. You come into Bethlehem and if you don't know anything about it, you read these signs and you think, who is it that lives inside this place? Ugh.
We are living in a big jail. We are in a pressure cooker situation. And of course, we are suffering from the occupation. And the occupation doesn't demoralize us, but also it demoralizes people on the other side.
Millions of people come to this place every year. Millions of Christians come, and they don't experience what the Palestinians experience, and they don't experience what I experienced. Going through checkpoints and being stopped and being questioned because of your religion. And how in the world do you expect me to go back to the US and live my normal life after seeing this?
I find it interesting that a lot of these tours are promoted as walking in Jesus' footsteps. We joke that they're not walking in Jesus' footsteps, they're running where Jesus walked because they're always in a hurry going from one place to the other.
The wall is a huge separation barrier that exists between Israel and the West Bank. Israel started constructing it in 2002 with the idea that this would be a security fence or a security wall that would prevent further uprisings of the Palestinians. If you're an Israeli, you talk about the West Bank. This is the area of Judea and Samaria that is under the control of the Palestinian Authority. But if you're a Palestinian, you don't use the term West Bank because you use the term Palestine because this land to them has been Palestine forever. After the first uprising of the Palestinians, there were what we call the Oslo Accords, and that was like they wanted to come up with a way that the Palestinians could have control over some of their land. So what they did is they divided it into 3 different areas. They call them areas A, Area B, and Area C. City centers like Bethlehem and Ramallah and Jericho are considered Area A, and they're under control of the Palestinian Authority. As you get further out from the cities, you move into what they call Area B, where it's like the Palestinian Authority has some control over picking up garbage and this sort of thing, but they don't have any real authority over what happens in Area B. And then even further out from Area B into the more rural areas is Area C. Now, this land is supposed to belong to the Palestinians, but the Palestinian Authority has basically no control over it whatsoever.
This piece of land was bought by my grandfather in 1916, where Palestinians used to buy land without registration. The family worked here, lived satisfied, happy, farming and planting different kinds of trees until 1991, where Israel government declared this piece of land as a state land. But this is a private property, it's not a state land. 27 years struggling in front of the Israeli court. They kept postponing the case to find an excuse to confiscate the land. You know, as Palestinians, we live here under Israeli military laws. They say if you do not use your land 3 years, it is automatically considered as a state land. The idea of kept postponing to keep us under stress, to push us to leave or to push us to violence. So we saw ourselves in front of 2 options, whether to continue struggle or to leave. But we say we are not leaving and we are not reacting. We want to continue our work, acting in a positive way.
It's difficult because this is supposed to be Palestine, and this was land that is inside the Green Line that had been given to them, yet they can't get in any Area C. No Palestinians can build buildings. If they live in Area C, they can't redo their bathroom. They're not allowed to make any updates or any changes to their homes because they live in what's known as Area C. It's just it's like these people are being sat on. They don't have control of their own lives.
When we talk to many Christian leaders and normal Christians, pilgrims who come to this land, we realize that, as I usually say, by default, they have already a perspective, a worldview about this land, about the situation, and in particular about the conflict. They have a certain way in which they look to the Israeli and a certain way in which they look to the Palestinian. They come with a certain assumption about who's good and who's bad, without really not just any knowledge about the situation, and also with a theology that, whether they know it or not, intentionally or not intentionally, favors one people over the other. And many times a theology that is harmful to us Palestinians. For example, the fact that this is a Jewish land, that God gave this land to the Jewish people as an eternal possession, and all of a sudden we say, but wait a minute, we happen to be living here. Are we against God's will? These kind of questions that we try to raise to say, look at the consequences of what you're teaching. Where is justice in all of that? I'm convinced that if we wait for politicians to solve the conflict here today, we're not going to get anywhere.
Sometimes the media doesn't played a fair role, and they don't know from the news what they will expect to see here or experience. But my advice to everyone willing to come as a pilgrim or visitor to the land, open your heart so you can see and you can listen to the Lord's voice to you.
I was meeting with a friend yesterday, a friend of a friend, and a friend of mine encouraged this seminary student to do his best while in the land to meet me. And he was part of a prominent Christian evangelical seminary students who are here for 3 weeks. And he came alone to Bethlehem to meet me. And I said, so where's the rest of the group? He said, well, I had to leave. They are in a pottery class in somewhere in Jerusalem. And I thought, so what's more interesting and beneficial for seminarians, future leaders, to meet Palestinian Christians who have been living here, witnessing here, to listen about how we deal with occupation, how we try to build bridges with Muslims and Jews, how we live as a small minority here, yet part of the community, or listening about excavations, about things that happened 2,000 years ago. And he's speechless. He said, this is what we're here for. And probably we're going to come to Bethlehem for 2 hours to visit the Nativity Church, in and out and leave. Is this the right way to do it? And I'm talking about seminarians here, not just a typical church groups. We somehow ignore suffering. We become impassionate about issues for the sake of doing a religious duty.
Every Jew, like any Jew, if they see an Arab walking beside them in the mall or anything and they spoke in Arabic, they think we're gonna just have a bomb or something. And I think it's scary for them being near us. They think we're gonna stab one of them or something, and we think that they're gonna do the same thing to us. So it's scary being around them. We're not terrorists, so they think we are, but they actually do more harmful stuff to us than we do.
They can't leave this place freely. They don't have the freedom of movement. They don't go on dates to the movies because there aren't movies here.
We don't have malls here. There they do have malls. Movies, we don't have cinemas here. Our voice is barely heard, yeah, and we're kind of present because we can barely go out of Palestine, and it's only in Palestine.
The Christians here are becoming a minority. I was reading the statistics 2 days ago. The Christians in the West Bank are from 1 to 2.5% of the whole population of the West Bank, and also they are 1% of the population of Gaza.
Palestinian Christians are fleeing the country in large numbers, and this is where the problem is. I grew up in the old city. I walked through the streets of the old city, and I've seen the changes of the old city as well. Sometimes you see things walking to work in the morning, and you see them holding a young boy going to school, asking him for identifications, and he's just a young boy. It's so hard for us to see this.
It's very difficult for children to reach us, and it is because of the separation barrier. It's because of the checkpoints. It's not easy. It's sometimes very difficult to get permits. Sometimes some mothers, they don't get the permit, so another member of the family joins the child. It's a big challenge.
Sometimes they'll ask me where I'm from, and I tell them America, and they just let me go on through. They don't really care. But there was one evening I was coming back in, and the soldier must have been really young, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. And he asked me where I was from, and I told him America, like I always do. And he said, "Do you know you're going into Bethlehem?" Like, huh? He said, do you want to go into Bethlehem? I'm like, yeah, I live there. And he couldn't believe it. And as I drove through, I thought to myself, I wonder if he's ever driven through that checkpoint, if he's ever like passed over the threshold of the wall to understand that the people who live inside there aren't monsters. They're not gonna eat anybody alive. They're normal people. Yeah. I have never felt unsafe here. I actually feel more safe here inside these walls than I do outside of them.
Many times we encounter those who don't know anything about the situation. Many times they will tell us, am I in the West Bank or in Israel? So these questions will show that people are not aware of the context where they are visiting. Many times we tell them about the situation, what we are doing, why the wall is here. So they were bewildered. And many times we have even Germans who has an encounter with the German wall, and they would say, we thought that there will be no wall after the Berlin Wall, and now we see that wall.
They spent more time in waiting on the lines or on the queue more than the time when they go to visit the stars where Jesus was born. Bethlehem is the place where Jesus was born. Bethlehem under the Palestinian Authority now. So if you want to consider Bethlehem as part of Israel, then you have to have a lesson in history.
You know, I have my own olive trees. In the past, when you don't have developed irrigation system, when you need to carry the water either on donkeys or with buckets and to move towards miles of miles, and to water it for the first 5 years, you know, in such mountainous area. How much struggle, how much suffering, how much sacrifice you have raised this olive tree in that. It is becoming like our children, to nourish it with love, with agape, with passion, with compassion, and to have the resilience and the perseverance that you will eat from its fruits in the coming years, and the generations to come will do it also. And most of our orchards have been taken by settlements, by security, dividing the land, depriving us from our land, from our orchards, and this is very painful and a bleeding wound that has not been healed. And the tree, which goes back to 2,000 years when Jesus wept, you know, in the Garden of Gethsemane, I believe Jesus is still weeping on the trees uprooted.
My father, who created this organization, who founded it, who went to the USA and got his degree from the University of Notre Dame in Peace Studies, was detained, imprisoned, arrested 18 times for using nonviolence, for advocating on behalf of the Palestinian people. Oftentimes we feel like we're not allowed to be passionate. We have to be very calm and speak calmly and reassert our oppressor's right to security and peace.
As a father, I don't want my children to be in prison, not to be killed, not to be deported like other children, and given the fact that 1/3 of the male population have been in jail, 20,000 women have been in jail since 1967.
I'm not allowed to go to Jerusalem because they consider me peace activist. But I've been traveling to the States, to Japan, here and there. But Jerusalem, which is 15 minutes from Bethlehem, to be there.
Living in such situation, with unemployment, with lack of hope, young people see the enemy, see the occupation as somebody who is impeding their freedom.
It is very hard for us to walk through the old city and see soldiers holding weapons. It is the path of pain that we go through every day. We grew up listening to the priest, and as he preaches for us every Sunday about loving each other. This is the most important thing, to love one another.
As a Palestinian Christian, we feel that we are an integral part of the Palestinian community. Muslims and Christians live together, at least for the last 14 centuries. Lots of challenges there, because the local Palestinians have no problems with each other. And if you ask a Palestinian, what is your religion? Mostly they will say, we are Palestinians. And if you ask a Christian, what is your denomination? They will say, are you going to divide us? No, we are a Christian.
I know there is a lot of talk about, Middle East, this issue of maybe disagreement between Muslims and Christians, but it doesn't exist here.
The end of the occupation is not the goal, but coexistence is the goal. But the occupation must end first. And then we speak about coexistence. But when coexistence is the end goal, you no longer accept demonizing the enemy, dehumanizing the enemy, but you want to find ways to engage in his humanity and change things.
It's not a revengeful resistance, but resistance which still you can see the image of God in your enemy. And this is something very important. But this doesn't mean that you compromise your resistance. You do not compromise your resistance, but you do not have resistance with hate, with revenge.
The olive branch is a kind of reminder to the world that we hate death, we celebrate life, we love to live it with others, and that's why when we talk about the olive branch, is a transformational message that the enemy is a friend in waiting and the other is either a sister or brother.
We hope to live in peace. This is what we really want. We want to have a safe neighborhood, do not have restriction of movement, do not have restriction on building, to have a safe environment for everyone around us. This is what we really want, and we want to live in peace.
We look for New Jerusalem, where the sheep and lamb can live together, and this can be done.
Christian Palestinians, I always preach peace, always yearn for peace, and wish that all religions, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, will come together and live in this earthly kingdom together.
We pray for God that one day this land that peace will prevail on this earth one day. So what we are trying to do in this community, we are trying to inject our people with hope.
On the psychological level, if you are feeling alone, you might resort to desperate approaches. But when you feel that you are loved and you are cared by other brothers and sisters, despite they are from other nations, from other religions, it creates a healthy atmosphere for them, and they will tell you how much we appreciate your presence in South Hebron Hills, in Hebron, in Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Yanun, Tulkarem, Jordan Valley, and they feel with your cameras, with your presence, with your reports, with walking with the children to school, with accompanying the shepherds, accompanying the farmers through the agricultural gates, you are not only protecting them, you are our brothers, you are our sisters. And this is very healthy on the psychological level, that people care, that will help us to be seen as a human beings, and of course, to realize there is a way out, and will give nonviolence more support, more empowerment, more encouragement to be adhering to that.
The majority of Palestinians today believe in what we call in Kairos creative resistance. In the face of injustices that we face, what is the Christian way to respond? We are called to love all people, including our enemies. But love does not mean that we are silent over the injustice. Love means if you see something wrong, you want to correct it, but you correct it out of love, not out of hatred. not out of revenge. And this gives a totally different meaning to the word resistance. You do not resist occupation because you are angry, because you hate, or because you seek revenge, but you resist occupation because you think that injustice is affecting both the oppressor and the oppressed, definitely the oppressed more.
Nonviolence is practiced, and it's not necessarily for everyone because we believe in nonviolence, but because we have to safeguard our lives for security. We live in under a military occupation, regardless of the existence of the Palestinian Authority, an authority which has no authority or sovereignty. One thing that we find to be more evident and clear every year is that nonviolence is more of a threat to the Israeli occupation than violence itself. And my oppressor, my occupier, the Israeli occupation also deserves security, they deserve peace, but not at the expense of the Palestinian livelihood and lives. And so the only means to achieving and realizing sovereignty, to achieving a state of stability in which I feel that my rights as a Palestinian are guaranteed and respected, is through the use of nonviolence.
Like, there were days that I'd hear what the students had to say. They'd come in and they'd talk about the tear gas that filled their house the night before, or the young person who was shot. And like, I can remember being so angry and thinking, I can't believe this. This is so unfair. And like, almost bordering on like, I hate these people for doing this to the young people. But it's like, I realized so quickly, I can't do that. I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to be filled with hatred when I'm in front of these young people who are finding a way to survive without being full of hate.
We try to solve everything with peace and love, and in the Bible it says love your enemy, and we have to. It's hard to do it with the occupation here. It's hard to just love our enemy, especially for the families that have lost their loved ones in the war, or they're in prison now. It's hard for them.
I look at Christians here and I see that they've found a way to hold on to hope, even though it seems far off, even though it seems unreachable or unmanageable. I mean, they're still living, they're still dreaming, they're still thinking about a future. And that's inspiring to me.
Hand in hand, we should pray for peace and love for the world.
It is very difficult, I will tell you. It is very difficult to turn the other cheek. However, we are trying our best to do it.
Violence is something that our Jesus, or our collective Jesus, teaches and warns us against. Teaching us to love each other, to love our neighbors, to build bridges instead of the walls, and maybe to connect with each other, to see the face of God and image of God in each one of us.
We, as Christians, we have a lot of organizations. We have hospitals, we have clinics, we have schools, we have rehab centers. We have a lot of other vocational training centers. And people ask the question, I mean, why do you have all of this to serve so many Muslims? And our answer is that we Christians here, we are living stones. We are here to act as a bridge for peace.
Hope School is located on the highest mountain in Bethlehem area. It's located in a town that is called Beit Jala. We have students who have lost their parents, who have students who don't have a place to go, they don't have parents, they are very poor. We are very keen on welcoming girls because we believe in the role of the women in the society. Because in this society, women today are taking part in their family, in supporting their families and raising their children in a well-mannered, educated way. So it's very important for us to welcome women, and we always welcome girls at our school and try to educate them the best with other students.
Wiyam in Arabic means cordial relationship or friendly relationship, agape, if you like. Established in the year 1994 as an endeavor to promote peace building, justice, gender rights, and civic peace. What we do is like planting the seeds of agape, the seeds of non-violence, the seed of love to the other.
The Jerusalem Princess Basma Center, we are one of the big 4 national rehab centers in Palestine. So what we do is that we run a rehabilitation center for children with disabilities. Middle East is going through a lot of turmoil. If we can act as Christians as a bridge way of reconciliation and in creating some sort of stability and peace among people, then we should do that, and we are doing that.
The Christians here are the living stones of the country. As people, Christians, we always pray for peace because we want peace, not only for our generation, but for our children.
We are very happy as Christians to act as witnesses and to act as living stones, as they say, to show how much Christians care about the Holy Land and about humans living in the Holy Land.
We are equal citizens. We are citizens of this land. I'm not a minority. I belong to this group who has been living in this area, who has deep roots as a Palestinian Christian before Islam, as a Canaanite and Jebusite before Jews, and also when the term Palestinian come, who is a Palestinian? I love what Arafat used to say. A Palestinian is a Jew, is a Muslim, is a Christian. Our conflict is with the occupation. The occupation is the evil system. It doesn't demoralize us as Palestinians, but it demoralizes also the Israelis. And when we talk about that, we don't want them to be pro-Palestinian and Israeli. We want them to be pro-justice. But the most important thing is to understand the message of Christ and to put it in the context of the socio-economic political conditions that the living stones are facing and experiencing. There is no way for peace without justice. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of justice.
To the global church, we send them a message of appreciation for the support they are providing, but also we called upon them to repent on ignoring the Palestinians for such a long time, ignoring the Palestinian Christians for such a long time.
I think it's wonderful when we expose ourselves to this learning journey. How can I help my brother who lives in a completely different continent, in a completely different world, completely different culture? But how can I stretch a hand of love? I think the church in Bethlehem, in Palestine, sometimes can feel isolated from the rest of the body of Christ. So for anyone who's coming here, for them to prepare their heart, perhaps they could ask this question: Lord, what do you require of me? How can I be your feet? How can I be your hand? How can I be your mouth and heart to this suffering church and to these persecuted people?
If you want to follow Jesus, you follow him in his path of compassion, of truth, of justice. Jesus was a people person. He met people. He listened to stories. He cared. And oftentimes when I see these buses coming, they pass the checkpoint, they pass the separation wall, the refugee camps, and I usually wonder, do they care? And the irony is that they're doing this to do something religious. If you really want to have an authentic experience in the Holy Land, there is nothing more than meeting with sisters and brothers and celebrating our unity, the spirit that unites us, and seeing how 2,000 years after these events God is still alive and encountered, not just as a distant memory 2,000 years ago and we visit an empty garden or an empty tomb, but He is alive today, making a difference in people's life. And for me, this is the most profound, deep experience someone can experience here in this land today.
You know, the gospel taught us a lot of things, of course, but you know, one of the things was to be compassionate and considerate and help others, and not to turn your eye or close your eyes when you know that there are people there who are in need. And the gospel urges us all the time to be positive and act positive and create positive things.
The Christians here are the descendants of the disciples. So come and live, because the media doesn't always show the truth.
On the media, they always hear about Palestine, always in conflict, and always there's war zone. It is not true. It is very nice to come here and visit and see us. Come and see how Palestinians are living. Come talk with us, and we can be friends.
They need to visit people. They need to see what's going on. They need to visit refugee camps. They need to visit institutions like ours where we serve people. They need to have the human contact and learn from people what they think, what are their challenges, what they are going through. And I think if they can learn a little bit more about the challenges that Palestinians face and Palestinian Christians, and come spend time with them and learn, I think they will return back with a much richer perspective and much richer experience.
Coming to Palestine, or what they call it, coming to the Holy Land. First, for them, it will be a great chance to get to know the people's stories. Stories from the first, not a copy from the media. The media can fabric the stories in many, many, many ways. What we are calling the people to come and see, hear the story of the people, try to learn. You will see the things totally different than having it or reading it in books.
Make sure also that as a Christian group coming, as a church group, that you connect with another Christian group, whether it's an organization doing education, humanitarian work, or whether it's a church community. I mean, come and worship on a Sunday with a Christian community. Come have lunch with Palestinian Christian families, and show this sort of solidarity in which you say, we're not here only because we care about something that happened 2,000 years in your land, but we came because we care about the people of this land as well. So think wisely, make the best of your time, and do your best to empower the Christian community here.
And if you see someone that they are in need and you won't help them, you are not Christians. And that's why we are calling our sisters and brothers. Sometimes we feel that we are the voiceless people. That's why we are calling the international to carry our voice. So if they come just to see the church, they won't discover the humanity, or they don't discover the culture, the food, hospitality. This is all, it's part of our culture.
There are 5 Gospels, 4 in the New Testament, and the 5th when you visit the land and meet the people. 2,000 years ago, we said there is no room in the inn. Now there are plenty of rooms in the inn, and everyone is welcome to the house of the Lord.
If you want to come and visit the dead stones, don't come. If you need to come and hear the living stones, which we are the living stones as a Christian present in this land. We are calling the international to come and see